Human Ouija by L.Bachman. Beginning. The air had become so cold, killing all the leaves on the trees, making them just bare sticks upon thick legs. The snow had not yet fallen, but I knew it was on the way. The way my breath curled in the air, turning white in rebellion against the crispness, set the tone of my body. I was freezing cold, but I stood there, watching. How long had it been? I wasn't sure, but I knew if I remained standing like a pillar of salt on the edge of Sodom and Gomorrah, I would no longer be able to move. The blistering cold slowly inched its way deeper into my body, my hazel eyes already nearly frozen as I stared at the scene before me. Just as I try to do every holiday, I came to lay a dozen roses upon the grave of my late wife. When I rose from my prayer over the dirt above her, I saw it. A woman in the distance, praying over a smaller headstone. A child? Usually only small stones like that were reserved for children. It wasn't until she withdrew the 3 candles from her pocket, placed them on the arch of the headstone, and lit them, that I hesitated to move. I'd never seen anyone lighting candles on a stone like that before, so my curiosity forced me to stay and watch. I gazed out, stuffing my hands into woolen coat pockets. The woman put her hands together and moved her mouth. I had no clue what she was murmuring, imagining it was some beautiful from the Bible sent a smile across my lips. Finally, able to unlock my knees, I moved closer, keeping some distance so I didn't startle her. Her voice was soft and raspy. I could see she was truly broken and grieving. I'd been there before, feeling lost, hoping words were heard. When my teeth chattered, she turned and saw me standing there like an awkward boy trying to muster up the courage to ask his crush out. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to disrupt you. I was mourning my wife when I saw you place the candles. Is there a religious inclination? She nodded. Yes, but it's not a mainstream belief system for which I use these. She rose from her knees and blew the candles out. Walking closer, I could see the dried wax from her previous visits over the top edge of the headstone, which gave it personality. I could also tell there were blackened rose petals at the base, clinging to the dried stem that once gave them life. I don't follow a religion. I'm more spiritual. There's not a name for what I believe. I just do what feels right. Interesting. Wouldn't you say all those who follow religion are trying to do what they believe is right, though? She nodded, walking up to me, stuffing her hands in a fur muff. Yes, but you have to agree that those who do what they believe is right also go against their books, Bibles, and mentors, often for selfish reasons. I smiled. She was intelligent. I liked that about her. I'd like to learn more. Do you think we could perhaps head somewhere warmer? I don't know how long I've been here, but I'm chilled to the bone. We walked back to our cars, making small talk the whole way. When she got into hers, and I climbed into mine, I followed her to a small corner bookstore that had a cafe. The warmth wrapped around me like a comfortable blanket, as we walked to a table next to the shop's large glass window overlooking the town square. I gazed momentarily at the frozen water of the large fountain, around which the children sold their baked goods in the summer, hoping to earn some coin. And the patch of grass around it lay sprinkled with flower beds, all hibernating like bears in the caves that dotted the mountains around Widow's Bend. I liked my town. It had been my home for the past 20 years. Even after my wife died in the car accident, I was able to find comfort from time to time in the town's offerings. I'd found a small location overlooking the town. It wasn't anything special, just a picnic table, community grill and a large tree, but it won me over. I would sometimes head there just to read a book and drown out the loudness that had become my life. Hearing my wife's screams over the phone just before the car struck her SUV frequently haunted me in the weeks afterward. The waking in the middle of the night to my own screams had finally become few and far between. Those screams were just distant memories as I looked at the soft, heart-shaped face smiling up at me. She couldn't have been more than 25, and it broke my heart to see that she had already lost someone sitting across from her. It felt right. I experienced no hesitation or gut feeling that she was bad. How could someone I now clearly saw as beautiful be bad? She took off her muff, laying it to the side, and looked up as a waitress came toward us, ready to take our order. After studying the menu a moment, my new friend spoke. "I'll take a piece of red velvet cake and a coffee with your rich chocolate creamer, please." With a nod, I closed my menu. Never had a chocolate coffee before. Sounds delicious. I'll just have that if you don't mind. The waitress scribbled on her notebook, took the menus, and left, putting the order in the register. I turned my attention back to my guest. "So, what is your name?" "Marika Vadim." "That's a interesting name. I can tell it's not one I hear very often. Allow me to introduce myself. I'm Oscar Sermons. Are you new to town?" She nodded. "I'm just passing through. Any time I'm nearby, I visit my son's grave." "Oh, I'm sorry. How long has it been?" 10 years as of yesterday. How about you? Can you tell me more about your wife?" 6 months ago, my wife passed in a car accident." I looked down at the tabletop. The waitress walked up with her order. "Is there anything else I can get you?" she asked kindly. We smiled and shook our heads. "Thank you, though," Marika said. The woman walked away. Our conversation continued. I had a hard time for a while. I didn't know his father very well. It was one of those one-nighters that turned out to last a lot longer than expected. For me, at least. The metric was the best thing that had come into my life. I asked myself every day why I had been blessed with someone as innocent, as good, and as smart as he was. She chewed her bottom lip, reflecting on the memories. A tear trickled from her left eye. She sniffled and became strong again, straightening her back against the chair. Marcia quickly had a soft smile behind her coffee. I never got the chance to have children. Lane and I had talked about it, but we hadn't been married for 3 years. In that moment, I thought of my beautiful blonde-haired wife on our wedding day. A white dress hanging perfectly as she walked down the aisle toward me. I breathed out, wondering how I'd gotten so lucky to meet such a woman. The ceremony was the stereotypical spring wedding. She wouldn't have had it any other way because she'd been planning it since she was a teenager. She had so much life left to live, so much life left within her. I swallowed hard before taking a sip of my coffee. How long do you plan on staying before you move on? She'd just taken a bite of a velvet cake when she looked at me, thinking out loud. I arrived this morning. Unless I'm given a reason to stay longer, I usually stay about a day or two. I have a cousin who lives in town, and I usually stay with her. It's nice, like a family reunion. Reunions can be nice. I've lived here for close to 20 years, so I may know your cousin. Madalena Vadim. Our dads are brothers. It took me a moment, but then I realised who the fathers were. Who and what she was. Unsure how she'd react, I said nothing, but it made her even more fascinating to me. The Vadim brothers were well-known gypsies who lived up in the mountains just to the north of town, collectively living in several trailers around a 2-story greenhouse. When I didn't answer, she smirked. I'll take the silence as confirmation that you do know my cousin, or at least the Vadim brothers. You know what I am? I nodded. I do, and I'm okay with that. Hoping she wouldn't run off, I smiled a little. I've no problem at all. Something about living in the mountains away from the hustle and bustle of the city seems quaint. Having family that close at all times, I couldn't imagine. After I graduated school, my parents moved. However, I liked the town, so I stayed behind. She took another sip of her coffee and a few more bites of cake before pushing the plate aside and focusing on her cup. I've settled before. I have some cousins who can't stand being in one place for more than a week or two, but I'm a flexible person. At this point in my life, as long as I'm happy, I can stay or roam. I've been just about everywhere in the country, as well as to places like Romania, Paris, and Spain. I like travelling, but I could settle too. It was easy to talk to her, like talking to a close friend I'd not seen in years, catching up on things, reacquainting ourselves with each other. I wasn't sure what was off the table as far as conversation, but her warmth welcomed me to be brave and free. I held back, reminding myself I had just met this woman only an hour before. As my eyes drifted off to the large circular wall clock above the double glass doors, I was only then really sure it had been an hour. It didn't seem like so much time had passed. Our conversation continued. We talked about our hopes and dreams, things we'd accomplished and things we still had left on those so-called bucket lists. We learned we had similar interests in literature and rock music from the early 90s. I wondered if she'd been sent from above in a way only God could understand. Refill after refill of the delicious coffee was letting us into a deeper conversation, things only her kind knew about. It was then that she spoke of a way to communicate with those beyond. The way her voice lowered as she spoke of the other side gave me a feeling of deep within my bones. Something serious and eerie overcame the atmosphere. There are many things in the world that are not understood. Things only available to those with open minds. I'm not sure if you all believe me, but I had a dream that led me to Widow's Bend this time. I saw my son holding the hand of a man. I could see the man's legs very clearly, but as I looked up, he just faded into a whiteness surrounding my son. It was unlike anything I'd ever experienced before. She paused a moment, resting back into her seat as she looked at me with pleading eyes, searching for confidence and a shoulder to lean on. Malika licked her lips and sighed. I could see the hesitation, but she leaned forward and her expression changed. I think my son's communicating with me from beyond, wanting me to know who this man is. I have an aunt who recently came to town. She's gifted in a very special way. I want you to come with me when I visit her. I think she can give you some answers as well. Are you sure? I was honoured that someone trusted me so much. Malika nodded. My people are suspicious of outsiders, but if you were running some type of game, I would have already figured it out. Oh, I would... She pressed her finger against my lips. No need to explain. I know you wouldn't. She smiled and grabbed a napkin from the metal holder. Taking a pen from her purse, she scribbled down her name and phone number. I will expect you to call me tomorrow. I want to spend some time with my family, talk to my aunt, and go over some things before you're invited up. I nodded. Excitement coursed through me. Is there anything else I can bring you? The waitress asked as she walked. Erica looked at me and shook her head. No, I'm good. Yes, I'm good as well. Can you bring us the check? I leaned to the side, pulling out my wallet. I saw Malika digging in her purse. Please, let me pay for this. I wasn't trying to be anti-feminist or suggesting this beauty couldn't pay her own way. It was just the gentleman in me, the way I was raised. With a smile, I took the check from the waitress. As she walked off, I heard her murmur, "Wish I could get someone to pay for me when I went out with them." I disregarded it, hoping my new friend hadn't heard the woman's remark. Marika stood. Please, don't forget to call me. Can't get enough. I winked at her. She rolled her eyes, laughing, leading the way out of the door. I opened the driver's door of her car, shutting it once she had settled inside. She waved and drove off. Heading toward the road that would eventually wind its way up the side of the mountain and deep into the woods. I got in my own car and headed in the opposite direction, toward the suburban area, containing ideal-looking homes. Along the house-lined streets that I passed, I could see front porch lights guiding me until I reached the second-story blue house I called my home. The only one without a light on. Along the house-lined streets that I passed, I could see front porch lights guiding me until I reached the second-story blue house I called my home. The only one without a light on. I escaped the chill of the air as I drove into the garage, closing the door behind me. Shutting off my engine, I walked into the house and to the refrigerator. I grabbed a beer and walked to the recliner, thinking back to the last few hours. Malika saying she believed her son had continued communication from beyond the grave struck me. I wondered if my wife had tried the same. I had no reason to believe Malika was a liar or the type to say things for attention. I hadn't known her for long enough to believe this to be a possibility. But I had long believed the gypsies in the mountains had a knowledge that other folk would never tap into. Could it be possible? Was that why I had nightmares? Or was it simply survivor's guilt? I could hear the sound of breaking glass, her screams, then the guttural noises I later found out was her choking on her own blood. Was that a road I wanted to explore? I'd never been one for religion. Going to church was something I did when I was younger to make my mother happy. She was a God-fearing woman, but she never pushed me either way. I'd become more like my father, believing in a higher power that I would never truly understand. I accepted there were just some things no minister, no pope would ever be able to explain to me in a way that would cause a revelation to get me within the walls of a holy place. Unless something very serious happened, and I felt those places were needed. I woke up in my recliner, the television showing public broadcasting. I pressed the remote control button, turning the television off. I grabbed a beer and mowed my way upstairs. Rubbing my eyes, I thought I saw the silhouette of my wife standing in the bathroom to my left. I have got to get some rest. After emptying the contents of my pockets onto the nightstand, I showered, put on my boxer briefs and slid underneath the blankets of my bed. I was exhausted and cold. Hopefully, after my body warmed, I'd find enough comfort to fall asleep. After thoughts of magic, gypsies, my wife and the afterlife, I finally drifted off. Unfortunately, the images running through my head affected my dreams. "Oscar," my wife's sweet voice said. "Oscar." The reverberating echo made no sense to me, but I continued looking around every time she called my name. "Lainey? Where are you?" A rolling white fog quickly surrounded me. I coughed and squinted my eyes. "Lane, baby, where are you?" Still couldn't see her as I moved through the fog. Her words had stopped, no longer giving me a directional guide. As I turned there, Lainey stood in a white dress. A wound on her forehead dripped blood down her face, into her eyes, and down her neck to the top of her dress, completely soaking it. Her dilated blue eyes stared blankly at me. Overcome with the feeling of wanting to touch her, I reacted without thought and reached up. Her blood-covered lips let out a booming scream of complete horror. "Lainey, stop screaming! Stop!" I pleaded with her, backing away, covering my ears. Her voice became more distant the farther I stepped away. The sound of her screaming making me weak. I staggered, trying to get away. I fell to my knees and heard the screaming again. This time, I made no attempt to escape. I shut my eyes quietly, pleading, "Stop! Stop!" Fingertip touched my chin, lifting my face. I hesitated. But when I opened my eyes, I saw Lane. No blood covering her, ruining her dress or marring her beauty. "You must be careful," she whispered. My eyes stung with tears. "I miss you." Her expression remained blank, but her words were filled with emotion. "Darkness is coming," She leaned down and kissed the top of my forehead as I shut my eyes. I shot up in my bed, sweat drenching me. My chest heaved, my heart pumped quickly, and I felt the coldness in my room. As I exhaled, puffs of white fog formed in front of me, just as they had in the cemetery the day before. Freezing and trying to calm down, I got up, rubbing my arms as I made my way downstairs to the thermostat. What the? The heat was set at 75. It shouldn't have been as cold as it was, and nowhere near as frigid as it would be to produce such frosted breath. The heater kicked on, so I headed back upstairs. There was nothing to do except lay in bed and try to sleep. I watched the darkness outside my window. Bare branches moved into the nighttime breeze, with the sun finally transforming an inky sky into pastel morning colours. Sighing, I got up and dressed. As I made my way back to the kitchen, I tried explaining the dream. Maybe that beer had been too much for me. Maybe the visit to a grave had added to it. These were things I told myself while the coffee brewed. The newspaper thumping against my front door, along with the sight of the paperboy riding his bike across my yard, signalled the start of another day. I collected the newspaper and poured my coffee into a large white mug. I read about the previous night's activities and a local event featuring the history of Widow's Bend. After an uneventful morning, I made the call to Monica. I expected to hear her soft, raspy tones, but a deep male voice answered instead. Hello? I answered. Hello, I'm looking for Monica. This is Oscar. Oscar? Well, I believe whoever this Monica is gave you a fake number. Sorry, man. Good. The mystery man was interrupted by yelling. I couldn't make out everything, but I heard words in a foreign language. The man retorted. Fine, all right. Monica softly spoke. I'm so sorry about that. Please excuse my cousin, David. He's in a mood this morning. He got to my phone before I could. I laughed. It's all right. I think we all have that one family member. Yeah, well, I must be lucky because I have several like that. Mainly male, mainly nosy. Anyway, how were you today? I hesitated. I wanted to tell her about the nightmare, the coldness, and how I was still exhausted, but I just replied, I'm doing okay. How about you? I'm fine, thank you. If you don't mind, would you like to come over for a visit sometime today? My Aunt Carol wants to meet you. I smiled. I'm free now. Can you give the directions? I'm not really familiar with the roads up into the mountains. I looked around for a piece of paper, finding only an unopened envelope from a local business. I grabbed a pen and wrote the directions. She spelt it off. All right. I'll be up in an hour or so. The dirt road twisted and curved its way through the trees. Parts of it remained hidden in places by large bushes and rocks that appeared from time to time. It wasn't until I went around a sharp turn, a large boulder hanging on the top of a cliff above, that I became nervous. I saw this as one of the clues I was getting closer. Monica had directed me to a cabin hidden on the farthest side of the mountain, deep in the backwoods of Widow's Bend. As I turned off the road, my tires crunched on the frozen leaves. The clouds above were thick, hinting that today may be the day snow finally fell. forcing the residents inside. As I inched up the driveway, I viewed 5 men hanging around a fire pit with logs and other burnable debris. To the right of the cabin sat a camper, a few tents behind it, and a few cars on the left. However, it was the beautiful cabin that grabbed my attention. As I parked, the men stirred, one holding a cigar to his lips. His thumb, tucked just inside his belt, stared me down. Thick smoke billowed from his lips and nose like an old dragon wanting a reason to attack. After getting out of the car, I walked toward the man. "I'm here to see Marika," I said. "Marika, that Gadja is here." His voice was familiar. It was the one who had answered the phone. Marika opened the screen door of the cabin and let it slam shut. She bickered at David, throwing her hands in his face. This was not the same woman I had met before. As he calmly responded and smiled toward me, she rolled her eyes, becoming the woman I had previously met. That was David. Just ignore him. Come on inside and out of the cold. I followed her as the piercing gazes of the men stabbed at me, making me feel unwelcome. I wasn't here for them, so I didn't let it bother me for that long. I wasn't sure what I was walking into, but something told me to run. Instead, I followed Marika inside. I saw another woman sitting in the living room, reclining on the sofa and talking on the phone. Around the corner of a large log column, a middle-aged woman came in. She wore a long brown skirt, black top, and turquoise necklace that dropped down to her chest. Her curly hair was pinned back. "Aunt Carol, this is Oscar Sermons, the man I told you about." Marika turned to me. "Oscar, this is my Aunt Carol. She's my spiritual mentor and has always been here for me. She's a wonderful woman." As my eyes drifted from Marika's face to her aunt's, I could see the resemblance. The colour, the shape of their eyes, the way their chins came down to a rounded point, elongating their faces, and even the way their black hair curled into a natural, beautiful way. Carol's hands went out, and her gold bracelet jingled as she took my hands. I went to kiss her cheek, but she backed up with a smile, taking her hands back as if I had burned her with my touch. I'm sorry, did I do something wrong?" Carol shook her head, smiling. "Oh, no, it's nothing like that. I'm a clairvoyant. Sometimes I see or hear things when people touch me. It's just a gut reaction to back away and protect myself. I mean no offense." "A clairvoyant?" I turned to Marika, who just shrugged. "I thought she told you," Carrie replied. She led us toward the kitchen and sat down. Marika starting making tea. "She told me you had a very special gift. Just not what it was," I said. "I wanted him to find out for himself. It's not every day I get a feeling from someone, not like I did with him. You know that, Aunt." Marika sat the cups of tea before us and settled down into a chair across from me. "Now you know." Carol popped her head in one of her hands, leaning on the table. She studied me. I'd never met a clairvoyant before. I didn't know what they could do, so I laced my fingers around the cup and relaxed, trying to hide my nerves. Unfortunately, Carol noticed and smirked. "He's nervous, Marika. You sure about him?" "Yes, I am. She's open-minded, and I believe he's been dealing with similar things. They continued their conversation as if I wasn't in the room. My eyes took in the look of the kitchen, looking at the displayed dishes, the canisters, and the glass front cabinets. Malika told me your wife passed away. Lane Sermons. I remember reading about that. Did they ever find who hit her? Carol asked softly, the way her black-lined eyes watched my face, taking me in, studying my body language. I felt like prey that knew it was being hunted. A few days after someone came into the hospital with injuries they refused to explain. After the police questioned the man, they discovered he'd been the driver of the other vehicle. He'd seen the coverage on the news and became too afraid to come forward until his pain became unbearable. I sipped my tea and found it a honey-sweetened blend of chamomile. They said it was lucky he'd come in, or he would have died at home. He was in intensive care unit for about 2 weeks before his injuries got the better of him. Then he passed away anyway. I was never told his name, but I learned later that it was Keith Mitchelson. Reports called him a local drunkard, that he was drunk that night. Carol stared at me until she was sure I'd finished. I truly am sorry for your loss. It is a hard thing to deal with. But when it's a close family member, it's even harder. If you don't mind, I would like to read your hand. I held out my left hand. Carol wrapped her hands around it and scanned the lines across my palm. Her brow perked. She looked at Marika. It was quiet. They shared a glance. Marika nodded. Something wrong? I asked, watching the muted exchange. Should I be worried? Am I going to die or something? Carol released my hand and chuckled. She leaned back in her chair. Everyone dies eventually. But from what your hand tells me, you have 2 great changes coming. One that is needed, and one you will not want. If you don't listen to me, the one you will not want will be a lot worse than you could ever imagine. Her words stirred fear. I leaned forward on the table, concerned. What do you mean? Am I in danger? I looked at Malika. Did you know about this? What was that feeling you had about me? You didn't say anything. Carol suddenly got up and moved to a drawer at the far end of her kitchen. I couldn't see what she had gotten, but as she returned to the table, I saw a small, dark wooden box in her hands. Monica reached over, covering my hand. Don't worry. The feeling I had wasn't anything bad. Trust me. I'm not clairvoyant like Carol. The feeling I got was that I had met a very good man, which is rare in this day and age. She patted my hand, probably to distract me from what her aunt was doing. From the large box, Carol pulled a black velvet case. Working the strings apart, I could see various items, such as stones with carvings, and a small light-coloured bird wing resting within the wooden box. You have a darkness coming your way, a darkness that will not reveal itself until it is too late, making it unavoidable. Malika continued holding my hand as Carol opened the bag. She transferred various herbs and items from the box to rest within it. It is good Malika came across your path. Without realizing it, she has a gift of bringing those in need to her. Some wouldn't even recognize it as a gift, but I do. She told me you came to her while she honoured her son at his burial site. This is significant, since you yourself had lost someone. I was confused. All this talk of gifts and dark omens brought forward several emotions within me. The first being a small fear of the unknown, which I had never been confronted with before. A second emotion being a bubbling sickness in my stomach. Finally, there was hope of possibly apologising to my wife because I wasn't there, that I didn't keep her home that day. My face became emotionlessly blank. I watched Carol cinch up the bag by the drawstrings. She held it out to me. I want you to take this putsy. You don't need to know what's in it, but I do want you to put it underneath your pillow when you go to bed. This will help you keep those nightmares at bay. I reached out and took the bag, feeling the various items within it move. I appreciate this, I really do. I've never been one for spiritual help, but I did find myself in the pews of the Catholic church in town after Lane passed. I don't know why, but something came out of my mouth I'd never told another soul before. With every day that passed since, I've even contemplated that there wasn't a God. I just couldn't understand why someone like Lane had been placed in the world only to have her light snuffed out by a drunk. Whatever you do, whether you sleep with the putsy or not, please listen to me, Carol said. She closed the box. When it comes to the other side, inexperience is a very dangerous thing. It's like challenging God to war when you are clearly not on the same level. Do not dabble with things you do not understand. If you want to do something, please call Marika. We will arrange things and get them done properly. I nodded, but my brain had begun developing its own ideas. Pushing the chair back, I stood up, stuffing the putsy into my pocket. It's been a pleasure meeting you, Carol. Thank you so much. I wasn't trying to be abrupt, but I couldn't help it. I just wanted to get out of the mountains entirely. I realised how this must have appeared and quickly recovered, gliding over to Carol and gently kissing her cheek. The Marika's. I had forgotten Carol didn't want to be touched. Her eyes flew open. As I walked out the door, I ignored the men around the bonfire. Hey! Hey! Where are you going so fast? David yelled, laughing, as I headed out my car and got inside. I glared at him as he continued laughing. He knew something spooked me with the way I was quickly moving. You come back now? Marika and Carol stood, the screen door open, watching me. Carol pushed a few strands of her hair back from her face. Marika watched me with an unadulterated look of concern. With my fingers on the keychain in the ignition, I hesitated for a moment, looking at Marika. Her eyes were so beautiful, the way her face shaped the peak of her chin, the way her neck curved into her shoulders. Everything about her had caught my attention, but I knew that until I'd fully and truly gotten over my deceased wife, I could never move on. How arrogant of me to believe she would even consider me in such a way. I turned my car on, backed out of the driveway, and headed back down the narrow roadway toward town. What was I thinking going up there, seeing a clairvoyant? What did I expect? I muttered. A bitter coldness had crept into the car. The hood became speckled with white snowflakes, flitting about, Bill resting upon it, and melting with the engine's heat. As I entered town through a tunnel of trees lining the road, the snow made its presence known with a clear message that it was going to stay for a while. My thoughts reeled, distorting and rotating, leaving me in a daze. After arriving home, I tossed a footsie onto the kitchen counter. I grabbed the bottle of beer from the refrigerator and spent some time staring at the bag. How could this little thing work when I didn't believe it would? What was in it that would keep the nightmares away? The more I thought about the cabin on the mountain, of Malika, of Carol and her omen, about dabbling and darkness in my future, the more nervous I became. Was it all real? Omens and black magic? It couldn't possibly be. With a sigh, I headed toward my den. Finding my laptop, I quickly researched the occult and things for protection. I didn't want to dabble, but I didn't want to go into the unknown of my future without something to back myself up with. With the internet at my fingers, I quickly came across runes, things for protection, and everything that could keep all the darkness and shadows at bay. It seemed like such an old world thing. How could any of it work? Who was I to judge? I had to have started for some reason. The more my eyes focused on the crude drawings, the more my mind whirled with questions until my head hurt. Unsure if it was from the bright light of the computer screen or all I'd endured that day, my headache stopped me from researching any more. I shut off the device and walked to my bedroom. I woke up and discovered a blotch of dried blood on my comforter. I touched my face. I felt the crust of it leading up my chin, over my lips, and originating in my right nasal passage. I scratched it off with my fingernail as I got up to inspect it in the bathroom. Had my headache gotten a lot worse? Now, for the first time since I could remember, I was looking at myself. Looking at what I'd become in the last 6 months. My skin was pale. Shadows had formed under my eyes. I looked sickly. I pulled down the skin under my right eye, checking the colorization. Thankfully, it was still white, not yellow with sickness. I didn't recognize myself. After washing the blood from my face, I decided my first mission was to get a talking board. It only made sense to get this. If something was trying to communicate with me, I needed an object known for speaking to spirits. It took a few clicks on the internet to find a shop that sold spirit boards. It wasn't until I went to the shop and asked them about it that I realised it was just a game called Ouija. Hey, is there anything you can tell me about these things? I asked the goth girl standing behind the glass counter. She seemed more interested in turning the pages of a newspaper than helping. She slowly blinked, taking her time before responding. Yeah, light some candles, turn the lights out and say Bloody Mary 3 times. The girl turned back toward the article she'd been reading, ignoring my very existence. Walking up and down the aisle of this occult novelty shop, I found books on protection. Opening one up, I quickly read how to cast a protection circle of natural sea salt before doing any magical works. Instead of investing more money, so the rude staff could get paid, I memorised what to do. I put the book back, intrigued by how many items the shop had stuffed on its shelves. In every nook and cranny, something rested. Tribal masks, candles, oils, items for altars. But it was the set of candles in the shape of female and male genitalia I discovered at the end of the shelf that altered me. It was time, and alerted me that it was time to leave. I paid for the game and headed home. Perhaps it was the store leaving a lasting impression upon me, or the fact I had been spoken to by a voice from beyond in recent days, but as I drove through the flurries, an intense feeling came over me. Should I be doing something like this? Should I be going against the advice of Carol? From underneath the waves of dread came the frothy foam of guilt and shame for wanting to communicate with my wife. Would it be a form of disturbing her? I didn't want to disturb her if she was at peace. But dreaming of her gave me the sense that this wasn't the case, and encouraged the desire to find out for myself. I tried focusing on the road ahead, but the more I did, the more I became unfocused, my mind drifting, eyes occasionally flicking to the black bag containing the talking board. I felt deeply troubled by all of this, by how things had changed in the past year. With heavy sorrow, I pulled into my driveway. My living room. In it I set up the spirit board, not sure what I needed to do. From everything I'd ever heard or seen about Ouija boards, it was a game that had been used to contact spirits. The atmosphere was usually set with candlelight and a leader, but it was just me. I set the planchette on the board and thought about the dream I had, realizing I was actually frightened. What if I got answers? What if I did contact my wife? I rubbed my hands together and softly placed them on the planchette. I'm not really sure how to begin this, I spoke aloud, finding a speck of bravery underneath the worry. Lane, if you can hear me, please let me know. My fingers lightly held the place around the rounded edge of the planchette, but I felt nothing. I sighed and pulled my hand back. This is stupid, I mumbled, running a hand over my face. Hearing a sound like sandpaper lightly rubbing against a piece of wood, my eyes flew open. The pointer slowly moved. The lights flickered. I felt coldness blanketing me. I remained fixated on the wood, looking to see what was being spelled. H-E-L-L-O F-R-I-E-N-D. Hello, I responded, realizing what the pointer had spelled out. Knowing my Lane would not have called me a friend, I instantly wondered who the spirit was. How can you help me? L E T M E I N S I D E. I grabbed a pen and a piece of paper, scribbling down the messages. F R O M I N S I D E Y O U C A N S E E H E R. I felt incredibly stupid and realised what it had spelled out. Why on earth would I let some spirit possess me? Is that what Lane would have wanted? Just so I could see her again? I asked. Is that what Lane would want? Would it hurt? D O I T L E T M E I N. Over and over it repeated the demand. I shook my head. No! I stood and threw the planchette into the corner of the room. The lights flickered more frequently before suddenly turning off. No! I screamed again. I kicked the coffee table, sending the walled pen and paper flying across the room. A deep fear overcame me as I looked around in the darkness, struggling to see anything at all. The streetlight cast a shadow of the window pane across the floor. I could see odds and ends of my living room, but as I turned to my left, the blank stare of the spirit from my dream was within an inch of me. My mouth fell open, but fear choked my scream. With my mouth open wide, the spirit crawled within it. I couldn't taste anything, but my eyes watered at the sensation of something crawling within my mouth, across my tongue, down my throat, which bulged like a snake swallowing its prey. My airways ceased functioning until it moved beyond my throat and landed in my chest. I inhaled sharply. I felt weak, but heard myself hitting the recliner before crumpling to the floor. When my eyes reopened, I saw daylight streaming through the window. Finally, Malika's voice rang out. I jumped at the sound. How did you get in? I asked, rubbing my forehead. What's going on? My face ached, so I moved my fingertips over the location. Feeling for a wound, I felt another trail of dried blood. Carol spoke now. Malika felt something bad had happened. When we got here, we found you on the floor. You didn't listen. She kicked the sole of my boot. We warned you. We knew you were desperate, but we didn't know you'd involve a talking board. These things are dangerous. No one ever listens to those who give warnings about their danger. Malika squatted by my side. I've got to say that you're in a very dangerous situation. I attempted to use old magic to make your body toxic and drive the demon out, but it didn't work. Her long manicured index finger gestured toward my forearm. Symbols and runes, I recognized them from my research. It's not uncommon to use protective measures when dealing with darkness. I thought if I used old magic to etch these protective and barrier symbols, it would drive the demon out. But through tears, I focused on her beautiful face. I detected her hesitation. Something was wrong. I could feel it. I looked from her face to the symbols on my flesh, trying to scratch them off, but they wouldn't move. What did you do to me? What is this? Callum drew my attention. They're burned into your flesh. In magical practices, sometimes things we don't give the results you intend. We're natural, but we are tools for the forces that are larger than us. If things don't go as we wish, there is a bigger purpose. Lessons must be learned, and what you have done is a harsh example of this. Oscar, you have been possessed. By my guess, you were manipulated by a dark force that used your desperation to speak with your wife to do as its own will. Malika's fingers slid over my hand, squeezing it softly in an attempt to ease these words. We're going to take you to a safe place. You cannot remain here. I couldn't breathe. My chest rose and fell rapidly with increased pain. No! I clawed at my chest until my shirt ripped open, revealing more etched symbols and runes on my flesh. Marika and Carol gasped. Malika stepped back, clapping a hand over her mouth. What is that? My back arched. I pushed out my chest, opened my mouth, and released a shrill of agony. The demon within me clawed at my flesh. Look! Look! I think he's trying to communicate, Carol yelled. Parts of my flesh moved to the different symbols. She looked at where it hovered, paused and moved again. After my chest stopped moving, the pain subsided. Carol spoke. It moved to the symbols of magic, man, spirit, and creation. What does it mean? Malika asked. I remained on the floor trying to recover. My nose dripped blood once more. They're going to become one. He's going to become something none of us has ever seen before. Carol turned toward Malika. Malika's eyes turned from her aunt's face back to me once more. As I screamed and arched my back with wide eyes, I witnessed the true horror of my future. The very face of the demon within, its eye sockets and screaming mouth, clearly seen and moving across my chest before the flesh once again regained its natural appearance.